So the dumbest bill in America is legalizing polygamy in Utah. Let me say that again. Legalizing polygamy in Utah.
And for anybody who doesn't know what polygamy is, or polygamy, which are two kind of things, they're the same thing. It's basically you can just have a bunch of spouses.
Yes.
Not just 1, 2, 3, 4, however many you want.
It seems to be men who...
With a lot of wives.
With a lot of wives, yes.
You rarely see the shoe on the other foot.
Yes, very rarely. And the legalizing polygamy is in Utah, and this bill has passed both chambers, and the governor has not yet signed it. He hasn't said whether he's going to sign it or not sign it. I don't know, but it doesn't matter because it's passed both chambers.
Yes, it is interesting because they for a while didn't know if it would go through because there was a lot of controversy, Republican and Democrat alike. Now, Utah is a very Republican state, but it's also a very Mormon state.
Yes, it is.
Brigham Young, brought his congregation and settled Utah, and for a long time, it was one of the last states to join the contiguous U.S. because of the contention between Christianity, specifically Protestantism and Catholicism, and Mormonism. And it centered specifically around polygamy. And here we are, 2020, debating the same topic.
So the bill would here's what the bill does. It would make polygamy among consenting adults an infraction, which is an offense less than many traffic tickets. Under current law, such polygamy is a felony punishable up to 5 years in prison. But this bill, if the governor signs it, because it's now passed both houses in Utah, would basically make it like a traffic ticket as long as the people are consenting.
You could almost call it a polygamy tax.
That's right.
You just pay a fee every year and you're good to go.
That's right. So in conjunction with crimes such as fraud, abuse, domestic violence, and human smuggling, those would all remain a felony, punishable by up to 15 years in prison. The House in Utah, the lower body, obviously, amended SB 102, which is the bill, this week to clarify that sexual battery in a polygamous household is still punishable by 15 years in prison. So the House amended the bill, but otherwise, as long as none of those things were going on, then it would be like a traffic ticket because you'd have consenting adults and everybody would agree and no one would complain, presumably. So that's what the bill does. The amendment on the House side is why the Senate had to vote again, which they did, and they passed it. So we have a couple of clips on this. So Senator Don Ipsen is one of the co-sponsors in Utah. And so here's a brief clip on what he has to say about it. Here it is.
It decriminalizes the activity and tries to give them the opportunity to bring their lifestyle and their culture and what they believe in out in the open, and they won't have to hide.
So there you go. So they don't have to hide anymore. So that's why we're doing this bill, according to State Senator Don Ipsen. And then State Senator Deirdre Henderson is a lady. She's the chief sponsor. I know this is hard to believe. So a woman is the chief sponsor of this bill. And we have two clips on her, just real quick clips. And she is speaking about this bill. And here's the first clip.
The wall Utah has built to keep people out of polygamy is the very wall that's keeping them trapped inside.
What? The wall that's keeping them out is the wall that's keeping them in? What?
I don't even know what that means.
Does that mean tear down this wall? Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall so more women can come in. I don't know.
I don't know what that means. It's a little above me. I'm not really sure.
So she's the chief sponsor. We have another clip from Senator Deirdre Henderson, the chief sponsor, and here is this clip.
We cannot get where we need to go under the current law. All of the bad things that are happening now are happening under the current law, and we need to do something different.
So she's saying already bad stuff is happening, and at least if we bring sunlight onto these communities and say it's just a ticket, as long as it's that we would write to you, as long as the adults are consenting and no one's being abused or being human trafficked and so forth, then everything's fine.
So I'm assuming her argument is that if the act itself is legal and it's all the other bad things that are illegal, that people are more willing to come forward to kind of talk about the bad things going on. I'm assuming that's the logic she's
That's the logic, correct.
Using. Okay. I don't necessarily hate that logic. I just I just don't know about the act we're talking about in the first place. So
Makes any
so
sense.
for all like putting it all out there, I am a Baptist. I'm a practicing Protestant. Now, we're talking about things like religious freedom and the ability to practice your religion, and I think one of the central concepts, which is why we're talking about this and why I found this bill particularly interesting, is, what really is acceptable religious practice? I know Mormonism is a recognized religion, but as a society, are we comfortable with polygamy being an essential part of a religion that we all have to respect and allow to happen?
It's obviously quite cultural. And
Yes.
it's systemic in the state of Utah because there are
Yes.
some 30 or 40,000
Polygamists.
individuals who are polygamists or
Yes.
practicing polygamy. And what I think is interesting too is the fact that so many of these individuals, here's what, okay, so let's talk this through. So let's just say a guy has 3 wives.
Yes.
And he has children from each of those 3 wives. Who's your mom? I think you know who your dad is, but who's your mom? Do you have 3 moms?
Yeah, how does the relationship work? Like, does each parent get their own kid, and it's like 3 separate families in one family?
How's that fair to the children? It's not.
I don't know.
It's not. And the thing is if you grow up on a compound like that, and let's just say, you have boys and you have girls, obviously, that are born on the compound and they grow up. Aren't you going to run out of women if you're teaching the young boys, oh yeah, it's okay to have 5 wives?
I do believe incest is a problem.
It's gotta be.
And it's not like it's advertent, like blatant, I like my sister kind of stuff. I believe, from my understanding, it's that the family lines have gotten kind of convoluted to the point that people have lost track of who's really related to who.
Yes.
And so it'll be like an inadvertent marrying my second cousin.
Exactly. And by the way, I just want to say, these are Republicans that have passed this bill out of the lower house
We
and
don't
the upper house.
discriminate down here, Mark.
And
We
that's the
don't.
great thing about this podcast. Mark and the Millennials, while we are conservative, there's no doubt about it, we're going to criticize Republicans who are idiots, and we're going to criticize Democrats who are idiots. And here's an example of Republicans who have advance this bill to the governor's office so that he can either sign it or not sign it. I don't know. But
Put him in a really weird position to deal with this.
Because there go his national ambitions.
Oh, gone in a second.
Did you sign that
Aren't
bill?
you the polygamist governor?
The Me Too movement, yeah? Aren't you the guy that said it was okay for multiple women to marry one guy?
Oh, God.
So there's a coalition in Utah called the Sound Choice Coalition. And it's a group that is anti-polygamy. And as you would imagine, it's mostly made up of women, and understandably.
Yeah.
And actually, they've done a pretty good job making their case. We have a clip from them, and this particular clip, they're discussing in part why they are opposed to this bill. And here is the clip.
The biggest one, I would say, is the harms to young boys and men who are kicked out. There's not enough women. There's intermarriages. There's a lot of incest going on because there's not enough converts. A majority of them are on welfare, taking huge amount of money that they aren't able to support. Women are assigned marriages. Women are
all marriages.
coerced
We
into
talked about it
staying
last
in that.
night. All of the marriages are approved. All of them. It doesn't even
approved
right?
by who?
Approved by
Depends,
someone.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. It might be a leader. Well, whether you get to marry or not, or whether you're signed or not, or so forth. There's just so much suppression in everything we've looked at, and people need to understand really what's behind the closed doors.
And that really is the issue, because if you are born into that kind of society, if you will, you didn't get to choose that. And you have, 3 to 5 moms and then one dad, and then one day you become a teenager and your whole outlook of society is warped. I think, because you think, well, it's okay, but then one day, let's say you decide you want to go to college and you leave that compound and you go to a school and you're like, well, what's wrong with me having 3 wives? And then
or you kind of get stuck in some of these, not stuck, but you go to some of these Mormon colleges like Brigham Young, and it's a very repressed school. They're always preaching a lot of these sentiments in class, and it's a dry campus, heaven forbid.
But look, premarital sex is practicing that in a campus is very different.
Oh, I just mean
from
like even not
having
even that
5
aside,
wives.
but like drinking. But it's like they preach these things in class, and you have to live this godly Mormonic life. And
Yes.
if you don't, it's a sin, and they'll kick you out of school. And I think it kind of pigeonholes these kids where they can't exercise a free thought about, you know, how to approach religion. You know,
They have to be deprogrammed. I think they have to be deprogrammed if you grew up in a polygamous society.
Like I'm a Baptist, but I was allowed to discover this on my own. You know, my parents did a good job of putting me in a number of different Catholic educations where I was able to explore a lot of different, you know, teachings and pick one that I liked. And I think when you get put into a lot of these religious, you know, very fundamental and I'm struggling to find some of the words for this kind of a religion, but when you get put into
a cult,
I didn't want to go that far, but it's pretty close. You know, you get stuck there, and it's unfortunate.
Because look, here's the thing: because you said you have strong libertarian leanings, and I'll leave it with this. Okay, fine. You have strong libertarian leanings, and you decide you want 3 wives, and you have 3 women who are consenting to that, but you're clearly going to have children. Yeah. And that's when it all gets messed up. That's where it all goes down.
But I don't know that I'm that socially libertarian. I mean, that's a stretch.
And these are the Republicans that did this. The dumbest bill in America. Legalizing polygamy in Utah. Well, that's it for Mark and the Millennials. This is Mark Fisher. Thank you to our millennial, Garrick Ross. And, of course, thank you to our producer, Adam Katora, and our assistant producer, Christopher Hopkins. Check us out on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and our website. See you next time.